Hello, welcome to latest edition of Data in the Hallway. My name is Ray Pake, Community Manager at TiDB, and joined by my colleague, as always, Daniel Van Eden, joining us from the Netherlands. How are you, Daniel?
I'm good, thanks.
Cool, cool. All right, we're joined by for people that are from the MySQL community, this is where I met Arnaud. It should be a familiar face, Arnaud Adant. You're currently a jump trading group. So yeah, as a way of introduction, please tell us about who Jump Trading Group is for people that are not familiar, what you do there, and how you got started in database and MySQL in particular.
Yeah, so for those who don't know me, I'm Arnaud. I've been in this industry for 25 years. I studied in Paris and then I moved to Amsterdam when I was hired by Oracle MySQL support team. And that's where I got to know MySQL from the inside. So it's been 15 years. And MySQL, as you know, just got 30 years. And yeah, after that, I went to London, started to work for Jump Trading 10 years ago. And I'm now in Chicago, taking care of Jump Trading databases. So Jump Trading is a leading research trading firm, present over more than 10 locations. Um, you know, Thousands of people working for Jump Trading. It's a big company, and so we have a lot of interesting database problems.
Right. Yeah. I'd imagine, I'm sure we'll talk about this too. You're not just using like a one, like for example, MySQL database alone. You probably have a lot of data needs. So
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
I will mention that in the rest of the podcast,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
um, when there's no one size fits all database that
Mhm.
simply doesn't exist, and
Right.
even for LTP,
Mhm.
you have different choices.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's interesting. You're making your westward journey from France, so maybe you'll end up in APAC someday in the next phase of your career. But I'm just joking, unless that's what you want
Oh
to
no,
do.
we are present. My team is
Yeah.
present over
Yeah.
the all the continents, but
Yeah.
the three main shifts. So we
Right.
have most of our people in the headquarters in Chicago, but
Mhm.
we have people in London and also Asia. So I often
Right.
come to China or Singapore.
Right.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, and I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about uh, today's topics is last couple of months I've been going to a lot of meetups and conferences, and I meet a lot of people from AI startups, especially where I'm located in the Bay Area, and then even within large organizations, a new team starts developing a new application, for example, and then they you know at some point down the road, they realize they need to have a database for whatever they're doing, and they need to make a choice on the database. And it's kind of interesting. I might be simplifying this a bit because I mean these are technologists, like pretty technical people, so they have some database experience, what even if it's from school. So whatever they're introduced to first at a university, or maybe they you know had other projects they worked in the past, that's sort of what they kind of gravitate towards what they're familiar with. I mean, I might be simplifying things a bit, but I don't know what your take is in terms of, working with, you may have seen small AI startups or met people like I do at meetups, but, uh, how would you characterize like people making their decision on their, like a database? So,
I think most of the kids that come today, that arrive at Jump Trading today, ask me, where is my Postgres database? And I tell them, why do you use Postgres in the first place? It's a very academic database. And, what I care about is operations. And also what I care about is what is mostly installed in the company and what competencies we have in-house.
mm,
So it turns out that MySQL is works better in our infrastructure for various reasons. It was also the dominant open source database 10 years ago when I arrived, and it was a no-brainer that that was the right database for most of our workload. And yeah, so MySQL shines with replications. Everybody knows that. Probably the AI do not know that very well, because when you ask them, what should I choose between MySQL or Postgres, they would reply, hey, Postgres is the most advanced database, etc. And that's simply not true for important things like replication. We need replication to have high availability across data centers that are across the world. And one of the key feature I think is still very good, like not equal by Postgres, is logical replication. Logical replication is key when you want to replicate from one system to another. Especially when you want to do HTAP. If you want to do, you have an OLTP database, and then you want to replicate to something like Snowflake or something like ClickHouse, then MySQL is a better option. Also, the reason Postgres is advertised first is because it has more features, but you don't necessarily need those features at AI startups or in real life. Like, for example, rolling back the DDL is, very academic, and, I've never seen a practical use case of it in production here at Jump Trading.
Right. No, that's kind of interesting, the way you said it. Like, people are kind of equating Postgres with database. Like, people are asking, where's my Postgres database? And I mean, that was sort of my hunch too. Like, people fresh from universities, because they may have worked with Postgres at school, so that's what they're familiar with, and they might be gravitating towards that. But I mean, it's not just like a Postgres. If you make a database choice, like whatever it is, there are, like, you need to think about like long-term consequences, like which we'll talk about in a minute. But I mean, Daniel, you go to a lot of meetups too, but I don't know if you get that same impression if you talk to like young developers. They just, like, based on what they're familiar with, what they're taught in school, that's what they kind of jump towards. But
Yeah, so Postgres is quite popular these days, and
mm,
I think like one of the reasons for that is also that if people start out, then like you start with a single instance Postgres, you don't have a high workload, you don't have DR needs, and then Postgres works really nice. And as soon as you actually start to put more load on it and need um, like DR scenarios with replication, needs to do like upgrades with like minimal downtime, all those things start to become really problematic with Postgres. They're all doable, but you need like a more experienced DBAs and quite a bit more work for it. And with MySQL, it's a bit different. Like you start, and then like rolling into like a replication, etc., is easier. Doing version upgrades with just doing switchovers is easier. And I think we try to do the same with TiDB as well, that people can just easily start and then like just advance to like the next tier of service.
yeah. No, I think that's, I mean, you're making some good points there. I mean, the point of this episode is not to like pick who we like or bash like particular communities. I mean, but the point of the discussion today is, what are things that we need to consider, and also going back to the fact, Arnaud, that you mentioned, nobody just has single database in their enterprise. Like, if you're any serious business, you have different needs, different use cases. So, but we want to talk about, some, maybe we'll jump to it now. Like, what are some of the things to consider when you're making your like a database decision? I mean, maybe we'll start with Like, when you're starting out, single node is probably fine because you don't have a lot of customers, you don't have a big team. So there are short-term things like I think in short term, a lot of people think about how do I get something up and running quickly, which you can't blame people for thinking that, but there are also long-term consequences if you're going to be if you're going to be a team or company that's going to be around for a while. So, Arna, if you want to talk about like a short term and like a long term considerations that people should have on databases, I think it would be a good place to start. Like,
Yeah, so like any IT questions, you need to start with the requirements. And so there are different kind of databases that you would like to have from day one. So, the most versatile are probably the OLTP databases. So Postgres or MySQL are a good example of that. But you will, if your company grows, and that's the long-term, site, um, you will need analytics database very soon or analytics requirement. And then as soon as you start, if you have your own, infrastructure, um, you will need an observability database as well. And those kind of workload are incompatible. They don't really need the same kind of data store. In an OLTP database, you cannot lose a single bit. You have millions of transactions per second potentially, and everything is transactional. Well, if you go to an OLAP database, you want big data, bigger data, probably up to 100 petabyte. Uh, and you don't necessarily to have everything in transactions. And if you think about observability, you can even lose some records. People in Grafana won't notice that there's a data point that is missing. And when you're inserting millions of rows per second or billions of rows per second, like some companies that doing IoT or measure everything, think of Tesla. Tesla, it's of course a big company. They measure everything in their robots. They measure everything in their cars, and they end up having a huge observability infrastructure that's key for their dashboards, their performance metrics, etc. So I would start with, instead of one, consider three initially, and then as when your data grows even further, you will need something like a lakehouse, because you will run out of capacity of your nodes on your nodes. They're not elastic forever, and then you will need something bigger also to keep the history, probably on object store on Parquet files. So this is now very popular. A lot of technology can do it. There's a huge industry commitment to it. But for example, you could use something like Iceberg. And Iceberg, gives you a table view of all the data stored in object store. So I would put the requirement first, and I would keep it simple, stupid as well. You don't need 10 databases. You need a good database that you are comfortable with for each requirements. And if you prefer Postgres, that's your call. That I'm even though I'm a big fan of MySQL, if people have 95% of their competencies in Postgres, they have good DBAs, why not? Like
mhm,
if I see, for example, GitHub runs on MySQL and GitLab runs on Postgres, they're both valid options.
mhm. Right. No, no, I think that's sort of good way of putting it. I mean, reminding ourselves whether you're developing an application or putting an IT infrastructure, like start with the requirement first and the goal in mind. I think that's a sage advice. And I think all of us kind of referred to this at some point in this episode, like as your business grows, like what are some of and when we talked about scale, like what are some of the considerations that we need to have in mind and sort of plan for, be optimistic. Your business is going to grow. Like, what kind of things that we need to consider for the database?
Yeah, so for example, the first thing you're gonna likely scale
Mm,
are going to be the reads in an OLTP database. So if you can
mm,
spin up, replicas very easily, maybe you need to start with asynchronous replication first, and then you have ways to fail over if you automatically fail over if your replica is going down, if your master is going down. But with MySQL, for example, you can scale with things like TiDB if you really need to scale horizontally, or you have very successful projects like Vitesse that are in production for many years. Like
mm.
they are slowly going to Postgres as well, but I think this is like very, very new. And so YouTube, for example, used to be run on a huge Vitess infrastructure. Slack is currently run on a huge Vitess infrastructure with planet scale support, I guess. Other things like Square, the payment also going there. Um, so yeah, that's why I was really insisting on the replication capabilities. So those are really key to consider when scaling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then I think mentioned a lot of big, huge operations, and what different technology they use to sort of manage their scale. So I think a lot of listeners would appreciate that. And the other thing, all IT tools, like including database, like IT resources, you're not like standing in an island. Like your a database is not isolated. You need to work with other tools, or I think integrations are another important consideration, like ease of how easily your database will integrate with other tools that are important. So yeah, if you can sort of give people sort of tips on how you can sort of consider integration as one of the factors, I think that would be interesting too. But,
There's an interesting story about
yeah.
databases and Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Kubernetes is really super popular,
Hmm.
but there are also a lot of papers from people that have tried to do this that says that just doesn't work. It's
Hmm.
like additional complexity for not many benefits, not much benefits. So I would stay away from from Kubernetes if you can. Um, and then yeah, you can use the cloud, you can use on-prem. It really depends on your requirements. Um, but the cloud has been in the news recently about several hours downtime. So that's a wake-up call for people that are basing all their infrastructure to one single cloud provider, for example.
Right.
In
Right.
terms of
Yeah.
scaling, in
Go
terms of
ahead,
scaling,
sir.
you have
Yeah.
different choices, but I would think that if you have an existing instance and if you can scale it out, I would scale it out until you have no other options, and um, then you can consider things like sharding or moving to an auto-sharded solution like TiDB. That would be a valid point, or you do your sharding yourself, but that's usually painful.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah, doing your own sharding is something I've done before, and I don't think I would recommend it to anyone. The main problem with it is it seems so easy, like odd to one server, even to the other, or you do it like a modulus, and that all starts out quite quickly. But then you need to do like reporting, and you need to combine data, or you need to like double the number of shards and move data, or you get like really hot shards and you don't have a good balance. Then things become difficult quite quickly. And there, I think like TiDB is often a better solution than doing it yourself.
Or Vitesse, I think it's also possible.
Yes.
Um, but there's also a third way to do it, is that just to um, offload the analytics load to another database. And that's a solution that I've seen very often, is that you scale one node, doing inserts, or and keep a limited history, and the big history that would plague the performance of the main database, that has been moved to an analytical database. So you can also do a DIY HTAP solution, and that's not super difficult, because if you have a replication solution between the OLTP and the analytics database, then it's kind of easy. And then you can just truncate or drop the data in partitions on the main OLTP server. And then this way, the size is reasonable, and everything is in memory in the buffer pool and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like that's one of the other things I would recommend that you just mentioned, partitioning. Like if you start to have a lot of data, looking into partitioning is always a good one, both with MySQL and with Postgres, and I guess m most of the other databases.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you a way to manipulate the table in a way that is not possible otherwise. Like if you want to purge the data, so we were thinking about the long-term choices, the schema would be very important, because if you don't partition initially, then it's going to be, you'll have to rebuild the table. You have tools for that, so that's possible. But that's what we often see. And in an OLTP database like MySQL or Postgres, the deletes are extremely costly. That's the most expensive operation. So you need to have something like more physical, like dropping a partition. So I'm a big fan of partitions, and that's how I scaled, even on a single node, you know, very, very big workloads, insert workloads, etc. Also, the great benefit of the partition is that every day you start fresh in a new B tree. And so you know, it's kind of a new burst every day. So very important for maintenance and stability.
Cool.
You often see the workloads, the CPU climbing until the end of the day, and then, going down at the start of the day. That's very, very classical pattern that we see.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. I mean, we, uh, talked about like a lot of different open source communities, like not just Postgres and MySQL, but also like Vitess and TiDB. So, I mean, I think we're preaching to the choir. All three of us are big open source fans, but I mean, in your opinion, Arnaud, like why is open source important factor to consider when you're looking at different database technologies?
I would summarize it with two words or three: freedom of choice. That's very important. You don't want to be prisoner to a solution. And, I've seen that in the past working for previous employers when they had installed Oracle everywhere. So they had their accounting in Oracle, they had uh, their database in Oracle, they had their operating system was Solaris. And so when every year or every 2 years you discuss with a sales guy, you don't really have much options. Like, it's going to be inflation plus the guy wants to buy a Ferrari, and there's a there's a 10% increase which has no explanation whatsoever. And so if you want to be free, if you want to have your own future in your hands as a company, you want to lean on more open sources than proprietary ones.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point.
Lock-in
I mean,
is very important.
yeah, no, yeah, it's not just whether I mean, I think some people think of open source as you equate it with free as in like a free beer, but it's more like free as in free speech, right? I mean, you definitely have a better control over your destiny. It's not just about dollars we're talking about here, I think. But,
Yeah, and
yeah.
you also can be, an actor of open source, and that's what
Right.
I am. I consider
Yeah.
myself as a contributor to open source
Hmm.
because I think it's important from a perspective to giving back as well to the community.
Hmm.
You receive a lot, and at
Hmm.
some point you have the experience and you have the expertise to give back. And so in my case, whenever I see a bug in any platform, open source platform, I raise it,
Hmm.
and I consider it's my duty to chase it and to contribute back. We also contribute to some features. You can influence the roadmap of an open source uh, database or an open source project. You can literally, meet the founder at a conference and tell him, hey, I need this feature. We need to do it. It's important for you. It's important for the community. And very often those things have been done. If
Hmm.
you are trying to do that in a proprietary software, people you will be able to meet them, but that's about it. Sometimes they are very opinionated, and there are features I'm asking, or Jump is asking for some proprietary product. We are waiting for them for 15 years, and there's no way they're going to be designed anytime soon.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely different dynamics, like open source project founder versus proprietary software founders. That's for sure. Um, yeah, and then I mean, you talked about your activity in open source communities. Obviously, I mean, MySQL is an obvious one because you work there. But the other thing you told me about was a sync connector, I think, for ClickHouse, and I'll definitely add a link in the episode description so people can check that out. But tell us a little bit more about the ClickHouse sync connector. Like,
Yeah, it's one of my projects that I started really from start to end. So I had the idea. I spoke to Altinity about it. That was about maybe 3, 4 years ago. And at the time, there was no solution to replicate MySQL or Postgres to ClickHouse. That simply didn't exist. Now there are other alternatives, but um, the one that we have is in production now, and it's very stable. And so what it does is that it takes the binary log using Debezium. We could also use Daniel's software as well. But at the time, we wanted to use Debezium because it was multi-databases, multi-source databases. So we can do whatever we want. We can do MongoDB, we can do Postgres, we can do SQL Server. Some people have used it for SQL Server. Oracle would work too. And then we decode the binary log and we insert it into tables, ClickHouse tables that are replacing merge trees. So it's mostly insert only workload, but it's merge on reads on the ClickHouse side. So ClickHouse can remove and merge the old versions. So the deletes are going to physically disappear. And so everything is turned into an insert. That's kind of neat. And so it works very well. You can do parallel writes as well. So it's actually faster than MySQL replication. Of course, we don't have the consistency guarantee. It's eventually consistent, but for analytics is pretty good. And then the new features that are coming, which I'm very excited about, is that using this tool, you can dump the entire binary log and run analytics on it. And that's something that usually people don't have access to. You usually, oh, I have an issue with the binary log. I go to the machine, I run MySQL binlog at the position and see, but you don't have the analytics. You have a very narrow picture of it. So I'm very excited about that. That will help us internally troubleshoot some replication lags that we have, or find crazy patterns with AI. For example, we could say, okay, why are we updating this table 100 times per minute or per second? Those kind of things that you don't see if you don't have analytics. And also the other one that I'm very excited about is that we'll be able to convert a MySQL table into a system version table with valid from, valid to, and that's called a slow changing dimension number 2, where you basically take a series of updates and you turn it into a table where you can do time travel. And so I hope that I have a stable version and can present that at a conference like FOSDEM or pre-FOSDEM.
Yeah, that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah, that would be great.
So
So
that's an example of
yeah.
solving a practical problem for my company, and at the
Mhm.
same time, offering the design to the community, and anyone can take this design and improve it or fork it or whatever. And
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that it could be that Heatwave has it at some point,
Right.
um, um, or even the clickhouse folks will say, "Oh, wow, we need this."
Cool. Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example of scratching your own itch, but also contributing to the community. And yeah, I'll like I said, I'll definitely add a link to the GitHub repo so people can go check it out. And like you said, they can experiment with it, fork it, or I mean, even directly provide feedback to you. So that's awesome. So
Even for
cool.
TiDB or Vitess,
Yeah,
it would be a nice addition. I think
yeah,
Vitess
yeah.
has a Debezium driver as well. So Vitess, it's OLTP, but what do you do if you want to, plug Vitess into a lakehouse, which is a very odd feature, or you want to plug TiDB to a lakehouse? Then you have those solutions.
Great. Cool. All right. Yeah. Awesome. So, I think over the last like 30 minutes or so, we talked about how, like people should think about choosing their databases, what factors to consider, open source, and to your personal journey with open source. So definitely enjoyed the conversation. Daniel, was there something that we missed? I think I have everything on my list kind of checked off, but uh,
No, I don't
we're
think
good.
that we missed anything.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I think we're at the end of the episode. This is our closing trivia. This is our tradition. We ask people, our guests, like, where they're located and tell people about the place they're located in. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, Arnaud, you're joining. I mean, I think you did mention this. You relocated to Chicago a while ago. So Chicago is one of the great American cities, and people may have seen it in popular culture or movies. But yeah, tell us about where in Chicago you live and something interesting about that area.
Yes, I live in the Chicago North Side, and right now I'm next to the Chicago River, um, in 600 West Chicago, which is the headquarters of Jump. And one of the things I liked when I first visited the city is the lake. The lake is really fantastic. Especially there's a nice trail called Lakeshore Trail, and it's about like dozens of kilometers. You can go to from the north side, Chicago north side, to the south side, like University of Chicago, and it's fantastic, and you can see a lot of people doing exercise there. So it really contributes to the quality of life, and they had the good idea not to build next to the shore, so it's really scenic and good. One of the things I wanted to mention as a kind of trivia is that the lake is also our water reserve. So that's where we take the drinking water from. And so at some point, the sewage was going to the lake. And um, so it was a big problem, sanitary problem. And so the Chicago people reverted the flow of the Chicago River so that now it flows in the other direction to the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico. And this was possible because we are, at the limit of the basin, We are at the edge of the drainage basins between one of the biggest basins in the world, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Gulf of America now, you know, so where the Mississippi is flowing. So that's kind of an interesting engineering project, you know, reverting the course of a river. I don't think many people have done that. So it tells you the kind of things that are possible in the US when you have the will to do it.
Well, like my parents live outside of Chicago, and I don't think I even knew that. So I'll be back there in the winter, but I didn't realize that the flow of the river was reversed. And I definitely second the fact that yeah, the Lakeshore Drive area. If I don't know, Daniel, you're a big runner. Like if you've done it, if you haven't run across along the lake, it's something else. It's really beautiful. Not, I mean, obviously not in the winter, but it's like
Yeah, I
really scenic. Yeah,
would like to do it someday.
yeah, yeah. You definitely see in the summer a lot of bikers, a lot of runners and walkers. It's like a really beautiful place. Well, thank you, Arno. Thanks for being in the episode. Thanks for sharing your insight. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you either FOSDEM or any other conferences down the road and share another beer in person.
Okay, so thank you very much for having me, and
Yeah.
it was my pleasure to take part in this discussion with you
All
guys.
right. All right.
So
Yeah.
see you at FOSDEM. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks.